Welcome to Fierce Encouragement. This is the podcast where we tackle life's struggles with boldness, wisdom, and some practical tools. Now, my name is Mark Walker. I'm a life coach. I'm a meditation instructor. I'm also your guide to navigating the messy middle between where you are and where you want to be. So here at Fierce Encouragement, we blend modern science and timeless wisdom to help you master your own mindset, to cultivate that inner balance in your life, and also to take those courageous steps towards your goals and projects. So whether you're a leader, a new leader, maybe a learner, or just somebody who's ready for some change, well, this is your space for some real talk and some powerful insights and some fierce encouragement to help you live with purpose and confidence. Thanks for being here. So, hey friends, really thanks again for listening and tuning in today. Before we dive into today's topic, I just wanted to stop and invite you to connect with me personally. Now, if you've been stuck or feeling overwhelmed or just looking for a little more clarity in your life, and especially going into the beginning of the new year or wherever you're at right now, I'd really love to support you. Right now, I'm offering a free 30-minute coaching call where we can uncover one thing that's holding you back and design a small, powerful action step or some goals to help you move towards it. Now, it's my way of giving back and creating a little space for growth, but also just connecting with you. Now, if this resonates with you, please stick around to the end of the episode for more details, or head over to my website, markwalkercoach.com, and you can book your spot right now. Well, thanks again for joining me on Fierce Encouragement this week. I wanted to talk about the inner critic and how we can turn hesitation into creative action on this episode. Why do I want to cover this? Well, I was kind of pausing there because I've been thinking about my own creative hesitation. I've shared it in earlier episodes, but just to briefly mention, I've been struggling with crafting this episode and coming up with ideas for this episode this week. Almost caught in those kind of loops where you close back in on yourself, coming up with 5, 10, 15 subjects, and then just riffing on those ad nauseum until I, wasn't able to do anything, just freezing up. But to just kind of put a container around it, I wanted to explore this because I've heard this from my clients this week as well. A few of them are struggling with their own kind of creative or career hesitation and taking steps towards those things that might be holding us back. But to kind of frame it up or put a container around it, I wanted to ask myself and my clients and share it with you. What if our own hesitations isn't something we need to fight against, but perhaps it's something we can understand? Not to kind of unpack that more, to understand it would just be to make better friends with it. Know that it's in the vehicle with us, that we're not going to be able to kick it out right away, at least, that we're going to have to ask it to get in the back seat and just chill out. But if we can make better friends with our hesitation and our struggle to take action, maybe we can learn something and kind of explore where that goes versus always being hypercritical of our own inability to take action. So part one of this, I think, is understanding our own inner critic. There's probably critics, it's probably plural, but let's just start with one. What's that main inner critic that holds us back in our creative hesitation? Thinking about creating this podcast and doing some writing this week, it's probably that overthinking and overplanning and needing it to be perfect. So my own inner critic is probably just somebody that's that saboteur that has a tendency to overplan and overthink and try to make it right every time. One lecture or podcast I've really been exploring the last month, and I listened to it in the distant past, was, but it's Vervaeke, Professor John Vervaeke, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, and his podcast or his YouTube class called The Meaning Crisis. I've been just really enjoying going through these episodes again. They're about an hour each. There's 50 of them. But they really explore the history of the mind, but also our brain's attempts to create meaning and find our place in our lives in a creative way. Another thing that I've been reading is a book called Embracing Shame by Bret, Lyon, and Sheila Rubin. I'm about halfway through that, but it also explores the idea of shame, right? To kind of go back to not being creative and how we shame ourselves, and then we don't take action, and the hesitation or the procrastination almost becomes insurmountable. There's a very, an impact on our creativity when we indulge in shame too much and don't explore it. So I think this is around some of the things why I felt blocked. When you have that intention to get something done in an afternoon and the time passes and maybe you didn't get as much done as you wanted, or you didn't take action, it's really hard to get involved in taking steps forwards. So I think it's important just to give ourselves that space and again go back to understanding why our hesitation is there instead of kind of critiquing ourselves or letting it block us completely. I think once we feel blocked, we need to start that conversation with ourselves or reach out for help or find something that's going to shake us out of that kind of gravitas of the thing that's pulling us back. The second part to this, and to kind of move through this, is that hidden power of shame. So I kind of touched on that. We can have conversations with ourselves. We can give ourselves direction when we find that we've kind of gotten stuck in creative hesitation. But when we look at it as something to understand and to explore, I think that that's where the hidden power of your own shame and the own block, the creative block that you might be enduring, I think that's where it can have a lot of power. So I just wanted to share some insights from the book called Embracing Shame that I've been reading. I think the main takeaway or the biggest insight is that we can use shame and those feelings of shame to point us back to the areas in ourselves that need more healing or more help. Now, when we define shame, one main definition kind of came up, and I believe they shared it with Brene Brown. But in essence, shame is defined as that powerful feeling or experience of seeing ourselves as really flawed and perhaps, or almost a certainty, unworthy of acceptance or love or connection. And then shame also happens in the body. Shame can happen in the body as well as the mind. And one other unique feature about shame is something that I think is really important that we all need to watch out as we kind of look through it in our own lives, is it is a binding emotion, which means it connects to other emotions like sadness, depression, or anger. And it can really be confusing when we try to kind of unpack it. And while it's confusing, we can still make progress by just finding out those places where we're stuck and need a little more healing. So to kind of tie it back to things I've talked about in the past, but if you remember the episode, if you haven't heard it, go back and look for the survival mode versus the thriving mode. These ways of existing versus finding things to exist for and connecting to our deeper purpose, instead of just kind of having a mundane life, we kind of connect deeply and we find out those points that need a little healing, and we grow kind of through our shame. That hidden power of shame is it's a signal to us to take a step towards it. So when we use shame as a tool to move towards thriving, paradoxically, when we work on our shame, we actually can thrive and feel more connected. Whereas if we're kind of avoiding and trying to just be in survival mode, not feel bad ever, then we can kind of get stuck in a mode where it gets really dreary after a long period of time. Part 3 that I'd like to talk about with you is just talking about specific tools to break through our own hesitation. Now, these tools aren't universal. They're not always going to work for you or me, but some of the things that I've had experience with that help me move past that hesitation, that creative hesitation, or that frustration about perhaps starting new sales conversations or create new podcast episodes. Some of these tools really helped me, and I've also shared them with clients, so I've gotten feedback from a few clients that have had great success with these as well. Tool number 1 would just be pausing, doing your meditation or connection practice, kind of quieting down your being practice. And one thing to do is to really visualize in this practice. Our minds don't really know when we're imagining something or when we're actually experiencing it. So when we can visualize and connect it with some feelings and some aspirational intentions, especially with regards to like turning and facing our critic, but with compassion, maybe seeing your critic. Maybe it's a young version of you that, was talked down to when you were creative, when you were younger. I know that happened to me. Having gone to Catholic school, feeling that criticism kind of come at my creative self when I was young is still something I feel I struggle with. But one way I can do that, I can see that wounded or difficult or angry, upset child and view them with compassion and allow them to kind of tell me what they need in this moment. That has helped me so often just move through those 15, 20-minute difficult points where I can just take a small work break, a small work session and move towards the actual goal or the project. One other concrete exercise I think is really powerful is taking out your timer, taking out your paper, and taking out your pen. Meditation often is difficult for some people. Visualization, some people have difficulty around visualization or they can't quite get into that feeling tone practice. That's fine. So a concrete exercise you can do is simply paper and pen, no distractions, turn off the phone, turn off the podcast and too much music, and sit down and rewrite all your fears and doubts as affirmations. Journal and sit down for 5-10 minutes, rewrite those fears, those doubts, that hesitation, the why you can't, and make them as an affirmation. I can get 10 minutes of work done. I can show up and make a little progress today. The fear might be holding you back, like, I don't know if I'll ever be done with this. And so your affirmation is like, I can make a little progress today. So rewrite all your fears and doubts as affirmations. That's the second great concrete exercise or tool where you can start to make some headway. 5-10 minutes spent in that mode is a very powerful breakthrough hesitation. It might not feel perfect. In fact, it'll probably feel wobbly and you won't want to do it. And honestly, that's a great sign that it's something you should just try for 5-10 minutes a day for a few days. And this last tool I wanted to share with you, I'm going to call it the heroic flip exercise. It kind of totally ties into what we were just talking about. But the first thing we need to do is kind of create that cognitive flexibility, if you will, to realize that shame and creative hesitation have a hidden power. So let's flip it. Let's flip or shift and use this exercise as a heroic flip and shift our focus from self-doubt to self-encouragement. See where the shame is, see where the creative hesitation is, see that as the self-doubt, and then just see how we can move towards what would we do if we were self-encouraged right now? What would we do if we were that heroic best version of ourselves or that creative part of ourselves that just took one step today, that just took one action today? So think about it like that. Do the heroic flip exercise, shift from self-doubt and self-fear, right? The fear taking over, and see if you can just be more encouraging. I just wanted to thank you again for tuning in and listening to this episode of Fierce Encouragement, where we discussed a little bit about that inner critic and how we can turn our own hesitation into kind of a creative action and using it as that wisdom and that tool to break through. I just wanted to kind of remind myself even in this moment, and as I share this podcast and put it out for others to hear, that our own hesitation is the birthplace and the home of our own courage. And sometimes we get confused about our creative projects. It's easy to kind of dismiss our parenting as not a creative project, but I think it is. I think being a great parent is a very creative project. I think it's also in music and art, but I think running a business is a big time creative project. I'm reminded of so many people I'm hearing from as I go out on my own entrepreneurial journey. But if you want to find out about yourself, try to start your own entrepreneurial journey. Go out and do things for yourself, because there's no other blame game to have, right? It's not about your manager anymore, or the company, or the CEO. When we kind of work in this venue, it gets really, really imperative that you show up and have courage every day. So I feel my hesitation as something that's blocking me, but I've been making better strides with it and seeing what it needs. But when I take courage, when I calm down and get connected with that part of myself that is in survival mode, and then just ask myself how I can have courage today, it's really been the pathway towards progress and evolution this past year for me. So again, I had a great time connecting with you today. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this. I would love to know what resonated with you from this episode. But if today's larger theme connects with you and what you're going through, and if you feel that tug of your inner critic, or if you're struggling with deep hesitation, don't do it alone. I'd love to walk you through it. I'm offering a free 30-minute coaching session where we can uncover those blocks that might be in your way, and we can set a clear path forward. Now, just imagine what it would be like if you gave yourself the gift of this support right now. So visit my website, markwalkercoach.com. I'll put it in the show notes. But it's simple, it's free, and it just might be the breakthrough that you've been waiting for. So you've got this. I'm here to help and support you if you're ready to take the next step. Otherwise, this has been Fierce Encouragement. Looking forward to the next episode. I hope you have a great day or evening or wherever you're at, and stay in that mode of fierce encouragement. You're totally worth that positive intention. All right, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.